Welcome to No Options with Ty Gibson, the show where life's toughest trials become the foundation for your greatest triumphs. Real stories, raw conversations, and the unwavering belief that you were built to overcome. Now, here's your host, Ty Gibson.
Hey guys, I am super excited. As we just talked about Coach Farney. Coach Farney, thank you for being on here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Yes. Well, I mean, guys, we've had a lot of guests on here, and I will tell you, Coach Farney, you and I, we go back for 20 plus years now, and I will tell you guys, I deal with a lot of coaches around this country, and we've got one of the best right here today, and I am super excited because me personally, have learned so much from you, Coach, just watching you, the way you treat these kids, and you push them to their max, and as we always know, in sports there's a lot of ups and downs, and I'm again thankful to have you on today, and let's talk a little bit about Coach Rhonda Farney. So, Coach, I mean, as you guys heard, Coach Farney has did it all, and I was telling her just before we started recording, I said every time I read her bio, I'm in awe of just all the things that she's been able to accomplish, and I know, as she will tell you, there's a lot of great people around her, and her husband, as we've said, Dr. Bill Farney, who's just an amazing person and been a big support to you, I know, Coach, and the team. I mean, I see him at all supporting you with all the support of the team and everything. So you've had a good team around you. But
Absolutely.
Let's jump in. Coach, tell us a little bit about Rhonda Farney. What got you into coaching?
Oh my gosh, I didn't always want to be a coach. I always wanted to be a teacher, always, since I was a little girl. And my dad did everything in his power to try to encourage me to be anything from an accountant to a lawyer or a doctor or something. I come from an awesome family. I'm just a country girl. My parents are from the Abilene area. They moved us to Lomita when I was young. And, I think the thing that's really important about all of that is just, they were good people. We didn't have a whole lot growing up, but we had a lot of love in our household, a two, parent household. I have two sisters. It was a great place to grow up. And I think, tell people all the time, going to school at Lomita, little Class A school, then just going down the road to Howard Payne, that's where my education's from. I wouldn't take for any of that. And I think just all of that is probably had as much to do with, the success that, any success that I've had. That and the fact that from an early age, we were taught to work hard, that anything was in our power if we were willing to sacrifice and work hard. And I mean, if anything, Ty, you know this about me, I'm kind of a workaholic, and I'm an overachiever. I'm not any smarter or better basketball coach than anybody else, but I do understand hard work, and I understand perseverance. And I think that comes from, from growing up in a little town where everybody knew you and everybody expected you to just do your best, whatever that was.
I love that. I love, and you're absolutely right. I do know you as that. Just make, whatever we do. And I think that's a good lesson in life, right? Whatever we're doing, let's do it good. Let's do it right. And you definitely show that. Now, what made you choose basketball? What got you into the basketball side of things?
So I played all sports, in a small school. But to be honest, I had some things I told you that I really didn't tell you what, but I told you that I was going to talk about a couple of things that I don't think I've ever talked about really in public before. But, I grew up when I was in the seventh grade. I skipped from the seventh grade I went the first half of the seventh grade and then the last half of the eighth grade. And so that made me extremely young. And so I was 16 years old when I graduated from high school. Again, that probably wouldn't happen today. And it didn't happen because I was smart. It really happened, I think, just because, again, I was an overachiever. And it was really funny. My parents didn't even tell me. I mean, I went to school one day as a seventh grader and went home that day as an eighth grader. So it was kind of weird, to be honest. But it meant that I had a whole lot of friends in high school. I played all sports. I was involved. I mean, I had a teacher. I was involved in FFA in high school, which had a huge part in I think who I am today. But that small school, I mean, I think it really set me up for success. So I graduated at 16, and I had a longtime boyfriend, and I was engaged. I went to Howard Payne. My fiance was killed in a car accident when I was young. And, you know, that kind of, I've never really talked about that, but that kind of set, I think, the tone for probably what I did over the course of the next 10 years of my life. And again, having great, loving parents, having a whole lot of faith, you know, they helped me get through that. And so did my professors at Howard Payne. You know, my way of coping with a lot of that was just to do more. So I took a lot of hours. I was very involved. It's funny. He was obviously not my brother-in-law at the time, but a friend of mine that I went to school with in Lomita, later married my sister. He was already going to school at Howard Payne, and he and I drove back and forth. And he was going to be a coach. And like I said, I knew I wanted to go into education, knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I came in contact with some of the most awesome coaches at Howard Payne. And that's really what kind of turned the trajectory of my life and made me want to be a coach. I think probably what they again saw in me was not somebody that was really smart, but somebody that was pretty organized and had some time on my hands. And I mean, they got me very involved. I helped put on the regional tennis tournament, helped with the regional track meet, got to be around Don Hood, who later went on to be the Olympic track coach, and, you know, got to be around Coach Slayton, who was a football coach and very successful, Coach Derryberry, the basketball coach there. They all had profound impact on me. And so as I started to realize that I admired them and, you know, I loved what they were doing and it made me want to be a coach, then I graduated from Howard Payne when I was still a teenager, got my first coaching job at Goldthwaite, which was just down the road, and, you know, had a chance to be there for 10 years and to practice on all the kids. I was the only girls coach there for 10 years.
Great. Wow. You know, I mean, yes, and a lot of stuff I never knew, but it makes sense. You know, people that we're around, you know, we talk about that really shapes who we become, right? I mean, and I know that in my personal life, obviously in your life, and then what you've done with all these great kids that have come through, you know, these programs that you've been at. Now, and again, here's a pretty number that we brought up a while ago, but 51 years of coaching, Coach Farney, you've been involved, and 39 of those years at Georgetown High School. Now, I say that because I, you know, just sitting here thinking of how many kids you reach in a day, right, that you touch every day in some form or fashion around them. You're talking to them, influencing them. I can't even put the, you know, there's not a calculator in front of me that could put the numbers to how many kids you've impacted over your career. It's it's obviously just like in your you know, when you're in your younger days, there were coaches that made a big influence on you and why you who you are today, and got you through things and all those things, right? We grow from our surroundings, but so 51 years in coaching. Had you ever thought at all that would even
No,
be something that you would
what's
be talking about
crazy
today?
about it is that I still think of myself as that, you know, 19-year-old that was coaching the very first year, that was the youngest person on staff. I mean, I still sort of think of myself that way. It's hard to imagine that that we've done this for 50 plus years. I mean, I would have never never imagined. But I'll have to say something that, in those 51 years, I've never really felt like I ever worked a day in my life. And I could talk, for the next hour about how important I think it is for people to realize, what they're good at and to find something that they're passionate about and that they want to do every day. So, I think that has a whole lot to do with longevity, is just finding something that you're passionate about and that you love.
Yeah, that could be a whole another discussion, wouldn't it? I mean, because it's true when you find your passion, your purpose, you really do. I mean, it's amazing to me, and that came to me later too, and in my career is being able to put, you know,
But
um,
Ty, I want to talk about something though that I think is important, and I want to own up to this. You talk about how many kids that potentially, one could impact in a 50-year career, but not all of that's been good. I wish that I could say that it has. But you learn as you go along. I mean, it's not all good. I mean, I know I've impacted people. Probably in a negative way. And I think that's something we have to be so careful, of to just always be aware of the potential that we have for good or bad.
well, and that's a great point to bring up because I think we can all say that, right? We all have done things, and you and I were talking about earlier. I mean, without failure, we can't be successful, right? And I think we could all look back on our careers. I could look back on my early career, and even and currently sometimes I look at a day and go, wow, that was the wrong decision. But I think the most important thing, as you just brought up, is we may have a bad situation or a bad impact on somebody, but it's really how we bounce back. It's really how we respond to that, right?
It is. And I'm going to tell you, I've worked for a lot of wonderful people over those 50 years. And, any success that I've had, it's been because I've been truly blessed to be surrounded by really good people. Had an athletic director here, Phil Blue, a few years ago. And he really made me cognizant of the fact that we need to listen. We need to listen to people. And, in our business, I always say we make like 5 kids and 5 parents happy at a time because there are 5 starters in basketball. So, that's kind of the realm of the world that I live in. But it's really important to listen to criticism. And again, kind of going back to that small town girl, that has been one of the most difficult things for me to do in my life, is to listen to criticism and own up to it and do something about it. But I've learned so much from Coach Blue. He taught me that if I truly listen to people when they're unhappy, and I really process what they're saying, and I really take that to heart, that I can learn a lot from that. And that is so true. Talking about wanting to impact people for the good. If you're just willing to listen to people, listen to that criticism, and really, dig down and not be deflective of it, then I think there's a lot to be learned.
That's such a great. I mean, that's so true. And Coach Phil Blue it was very impactful for me as well. And I'm gonna tell you a quick story on that here shortly. But I think the lesson there too is so strong that we, and I hope some of these people, especially people, if I could talk to myself 30 years ago and tell my, these are some things that I'd love to tell myself is you're right. I mean, sometimes we got to pause and listen. Sometimes we think we've got it and we're moving, so fast, forward so fast. And sometimes we just got to stop and listen. And the other thing too, that I think is a good point, and this is a point that I've learned and I think is really important. And I think you would agree with me on this is we've got to pause sometimes and think, but we can't help others if we're not taking care of ourselves.
Yep.
And I say that because it's truly important and I thought the best analogy I heard a while back was there's a reason on the airplanes they say put the mask on yourself on first and then help others.
Yes.
And I think people for you to be able to do this for 51 years, you've obviously taken care of yourself and you help others. And I say that because that's so important. And that's something I'm just now starting to realize in my career because I always had my foot on the gas, right?
Hmm.
And as fast as I can go. And I felt like, and I didn't listen as well as I should. And I didn't take care of myself as much as I should. And sometimes those are lessons. And I hope some of the younger people out there are listening, that those are two really good, valuable lessons that I wish I would have learned as a younger professional. And I think you brought up some good points. But
You are so right about that. You know, I think about in something that it took me a long time, and it kind of goes back to that same thing about, you know, not liking to be criticized. But, you know, I think one of the things that I probably was in my late 40s before this really set in. But I kind of treat every day now like everybody likes me, because that's another thing that I think we have to be so careful of. You know, sometimes people are afraid to be all they can be because they're afraid to fail. And I think sometimes, you know, you can see a dragon behind every tree. You can be suspicious of everybody. And that's a really hard way to live your life, I think. And it took me a long time to kind of get to the point. And I mean, people kind of laugh when I say this, but it's really kind of the way I do business. You know, I just get up every day and think that everybody I'm going to come in contact with um, likes me and will give me the benefit of the doubt. And, you know, I don't question them. I mean, sometimes obviously it becomes apparent that that's not the case, that I have to deal with it, but I don't go looking for that. You know, I don't live my life in a paranoid fashion, you know. And again, it's like you're talking about, I wish that I had come to that realization a long time ago, but it's made me a lot happier.
well, you're right. And you know, the thing though is I don't think it's ever too late to learn, right? And that's the thing. You keep bringing up really good points, but I mean, the failure thing though, I can't say that enough. I used to be scared to do something because I was afraid to fail, and really, to be able to do something, you have to fail. So let's go get that failure out of the way. Is kind of the way I look at it. Now let's go get it done. Sometimes we're so fearful to take that first step. We never take the first step, but think about all the things you missed out on, or the people you could have helped, or whatever the case is, right? Because you didn't, because you were scared to take that first step. And
Oh, I think that, you know, and I think in dealing with young people, that's a huge thing. You know, I always say that, you know, you have to be able to verbalize things before
right,
you can actually, you know, they can be your own dream. And,
right,
you know, I think kids, you know, in this day and age, they are afraid to dream. They're afraid to have goals, you know,
right.
because they feel like they might, you know, uh, not achieve them and not be successful. And I'm still of the old school that believes that, man, you should have high dreams and high expectations, you know, even if you don't reach them. And we never do. We're never perfect. You know, you're gonna get really good outcome if you just if you hitch yourself to that star and you just keep working every day. You're gonna have good outcome.
That's so true. I love that. I love that. I want to bring up another Phil Blue story because this has you and Coach Blue. You know, my career, I came out of the graphics world. I love sports. I'm a sports fanatic, right? And I'll never forget this, Rhonda. You and Coach Blue were you, Coach Blue, and Joey McGuire are the three people that that really launched my business back in the day. And I always try to publicly tell you thank you for that, because I remember coming over to Georgetown High School, and you guys would let me try to, you know, Coach Blue would come back and say, "Hey, Ty, I saw this. Can you put this on a wall?" And then I would come to you and see if it would stick and see if it would work. And it was just it was really a testing ground. But you guys gave me a lot of courage, and really launched Waterboy Graphics, which is what my company is. I always, when you brought up Phil Blue, I just wanted to say that because, but we did it at Georgetown, and then we did a few in Dallas, and that's where Coach McGuire at the time was at Cedar Hill,
Yep.
and we did some work there, and then it just kind of, that's where things kind of took off. So I always say thank Phil Blue and you and Coach McGuire, thank you for what you did. So
Oh, it was fun. It was so much fun.
it has been a lot of fun. It has been a lot of fun. Okay, I want to keep moving on this because you, again, we talked about the influence of kids. Now you, Coach, you over those 39 years at Georgetown, you've had some pretty amazing, not only just good kids, but really talented kids too. What has been some of your favorite moments And obviously you got a lot of wins to talk about, guys, because she's won 13 over 1,300 wins. So there's a lot of wins. But what are some of the moments and some of the kids that that you really have enjoyed through this Georgetown time?
Well, so I have to start out and say that I've been so blessed. Of those 39 years, 30 years, Kelly Richardson was here with me in the beginning. So she was here, and then Kristen Curtis was here for 22 years. Doug Hunt was here for 15 years. So in the beginning,
a lot.
yeah, a lot. And I would have to say they were my best friends, and they were complicit in any and everything that we did here. So just talking about kids, it's hard to single out kids, but it's always fun when you have competitive kids. That makes it fun. Erica Kovach, have to tell a little story about her. I worked with her mom. She worked here and was our nutrition director at GISD. And Erica came along in the early 2000s, one of the most competitive kids that you'd ever want to know. Went on to college and coached a little while in college. And it's really exciting. Just this last year, she got back in touch with me. She is teaching. She works with autistic kids in San Antonio, and she asked me to write a letter of recommendation for her, and she was the teacher of the year in San Antonio. And, that makes me feel so good. I think those are the kind of stories that I love the most about it. It's probably not so much about the basketball, but just the awesome things that the kids that have come through here have gone on to do, in life. Because we talk all the time here about, the basketball part is just a little part, and it's the fleeting part that's not going to last forever. But I like to think that the lessons that kids have learned here are the things that they take with them that make a difference. And, I'm really proud of, of how many kids we've had that have gone into education, not just those that have coached, but that have gone back to be great teachers. I was so excited at, we have our big convocation when school starts. And so this last year, Megan Herring, that had just graduated from A&M, just got married. I looked up and there she was at our convocation, because I think she's teaching like 4th or 5th grade, over at one of the elementary schools here. And that is what does my heart, so good. And I have to, stop and just say that, one of the things that I feel very much is something that as a coach, we have a great opportunity to do. And that is, we're with kids when they are successful, during basketball, and we're with them when they're disappointed and when we're not successful. And I think that's so important. It's not so much how, I want kids to deal with success or deal with disappointment, but it gives me a chance to help guide them so that, hopefully with the help of somebody at home, they can learn how to do that, successfully. And I think the key there is guide them through that, because like you said, we're all going to fail, in life at things, and how we deal with that has everything to do, about things. We talk here all the time, it's not about what we've, the mistakes we've made or the failures that we've had or made. It's like what we do with that information and where we go from here, that's important. And, so I would say that, when I talk about kids, talk about the successes that we've had here, some of the biggest moments we've had here are times when we've not been successful, and we've had to dig down really deep. And, those are the times that I think that I'm the most proud of. I'll never forget one time we were on the bus, and we had just beaten Cedar Park, and I couldn't tell exactly what year it is, but I remember that Jennifer Thomas was one of our upperclassmen, and she came on the bus and she just kind of collapsed in the front seat, and everybody was jumping around, everybody was excited, and what I saw on her face was not so much joy as just kind of like relief. And it made me so aware that sometimes the kids that play in our program, they feel a lot of pressure, They're very high expectations. And she did not, in a minute, she said, "Oh my gosh, I am so glad that we were successful. We did not want to be the first senior class, to not make the playoffs." And it really just, it made me stop and think about, it's one thing to be successful and to get there. It is another thing to stay on top. All the high expectations that come with that, whether it's in the basketball program or in life. But what a lesson, to learn. And it was a lesson for me, that night. I don't think it had really ever hit home, how much pressure the kids felt just in being a part of a successful program. But it's something that I've never forgotten. And we try to minimize some of those things now. But that, Ty, whether it's in business or in basketball, when you're successful, you have targets, on your back. And, I think it's important. We like to think that we help kids learn how to navigate that.
Well, and that's so important. I think a lot of times we want to be there for our kids and we protect them and all this, but they really need to learn some of that, right? Or when they do get out into the real world, it's harder to adapt. And so I love what you said about teaching them and being there with them when they're at their highest and lowest, because you're not always going to have a coach with them in life, a life coach when they're at their lowest and their highest. And so if we can learn, because sports to me, and I'm a sports fan, but I think sports to me is probably one of the best things, because you get to learn the ups and downs and teamwork and all of these things, right? Authority and all of this stuff that you have to really learn to adapt and all this, right? And so I love, though, and I think that's a great lesson because because it is. I mean, as we have said multiple times here, it's going to be bad days, but
Yes.
but sometimes we got to, but how we take that bad day and what we do with it is the important part of it, right?
It
Just
is.
like when you guys
It
lose a
is.
game, say, and that was a bad night last night, but we're going to be back in the gym tomorrow because on Friday we play another game and we're going to,
Mhm.
you got to bounce back and be ready. And I think that's just life. But I will tell you, and another point, coaches, I do get the privilege to go all over at state and talk to coaches and see a bunch of them. And I can't tell you, when I say I'm from Georgetown, how many of them go, "Coach Farney, you're Georgetown Coach Farney," and so you're always one that brings up. But even more, I think is what's really cool is how many of your girls that have played for you are now in the coaching business. I mean, that are in the schools. I've met several that I never knew, right? That I'll run into and run into different ones that you have influenced from the coaching world. So I think that's it's got to be a great feeling from you, for you to see these
It
people
is.
that are out there.
So I have to tell this story. Vicki Bryce Benson, who
Mm-hmm.
is the girls' coach at Westlake, is a proud graduate of Georgetown High School, and she's a part of our program. And I always tell this story about her when she was a sophomore in high school. Way back in the day, we don't cut kids at Georgetown anymore. If you come out for our program and you can stand us and handle us, then you're going to be a part of our program. But back in the day, we did make cuts. And back when Vicki was in high school, I'll never forget calling her in, and we actually cut her from the basketball team. And I remember her asking, what do I need to do to get better? And we said, well, you might run track, got to work on your foot speed, these kind of things. Well, she took all of that to heart. And she did whatever it was that we asked her to do, because she came out and tried out again and made the team and graduated. She had a great career at Concordia. Coach of the year over at Westlake this last year, has been so super successful in everything she's done. And you talk about somebody that's had an impact on kids. I mean, she's a kid magnet and such a good person. So I think about, what if she hadn't been resilient, and what if,
Yep.
she had just said, oh, they don't like me, and, they've cut
Gave
me
up.
and,
Yep.
whatever. But, just that lesson of just really try again, because that's what
Mhm.
people who are successful do. When they fall down or things don't go their way, they figure out a way, they figure a way around it. But I just think about how all the people that she has impacted and how different, her life would have been if, that had been the final chapter of basketball for her. So thank
Right.
goodness it wasn't. And thank goodness she was a lot smarter than we were. But that is a story that I love to tell
Yeah.
about
Well, I mean,
about
that's
her.
the resilient story right there, right?
It is.
From Coach Benson being able to just bounce back and again, and then look what she took from that disappointment or that failure, that didn't make the team, flipped it, and now, like you said, the impact that she's made on so many kids, and Coach of the Year, and I
Yeah.
mean, an amazing run. Unfortunately, up to the final game of the year,
Yes.
I think they were
Yes.
undefeated, if I'm not mistaken,
They
all the way.
were. They were. Yes,
And
just a phenomenal year. And, she'll be back and she'll do it again. She'll do it
yeah,
many, many more times.
yeah,
But, but, but it doesn't have to be that, I could talk about a ton of kids, I could talk about, Caitlin Buttram, that,
mhm,
Caitlin Buttram played for us. She was a point guard on, our state championship team in 2013. And, you would think she's a kid that has a state championship. She went to Lubbock Christian and she has a NCAA, Division II national championship ring. She's had so much success, but, she was a kid that honestly, when she was about a sophomore in high school, I remember saying to Coach Ramey, I'm like, oh my gosh, Jordan, you've got to take Caitlin aside. I mean, she's starting to be the type of leader that we need, but she can't dribble, she can't make layups, she can't make, I'm like, we got to work on these skills, we got to get her up to par. And I can even remember when she was a junior in high school, and she kind of had a meltdown in the finals to the Jack Frost tournament, and we lost to Lubbock Coronada. It seems like that was yesterday, but I can remember that. And kind of from that point on, she came in like the next Monday. And I'll never forget, she was tearful, but she was so adamant. She was like, okay. She's like, I know there's somebody in here that can help me make a free throw. There's and I'm like, yep, there
yeah,
is. And then I can remember her making 6 of those in the state championship the next year and, or later that year, and helping us win, the state championship. So, I think sometimes people think, when people are successful, that it comes easy and
yeah.
that they are blessed and they have something, really special. And, I think that's just human nature to think that about somebody else. But, I can tell you that, the kids that I would talk about today, they've all overcome lots of adversity, lots of things that were tough. And, I don't know, that makes them even the more special to me.
For sure. And again, another lesson there. I mean, as we talked about earlier too, was a lot of times people say, "Oh, they're so talented, or they're so good, or they're just at the right place at the right time, whether it be in business or school, whatever." But I guarantee you, if you peel back that a little bit, and you look at those situations, somebody's behind the scenes putting in a lot of work,
Yep.
doing a lot of hard things to be successful. And so, and like in Caitlin's case, she knew to get to that gym, if she was there, she was around people that would help her get there. And that's
Yeah.
another point, too, is sometimes we got to look at, what are we doing to get better, right? I mean,
Mhm.
we can always say we're going to get better, but what are we doing to get better? Who
I
are we
say,
around? Who are the
yes, I say
people
to
we're
kids all the
surrounded?
time, huge fallacy. I'm like, what are you going to do different? Because if you keep doing the same thing, then chances are you're going to get the same results. So what is it that we're going to do different, that's going to get the result that we want?
Yeah.
And you would be surprised at how kids look at me sometimes when I say that. It's like they look at me like, oh, I've never even thought about that. It's like it's not more of the same always. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is just more of the same. But, I also say every day, there is no shortcut for hard work. And I don't know, Ty, I have I've been in education so long that, we just kind of come through a period over the last 10 years or so that it was really hard for me to deal with because for the first time ever in my life, I heard, oh, we just need to work smarter, not harder, just smarter. And I get that, I get that we probably do need to do that, but, somehow that discounts in my mind,
Yeah.
it's like how difficult it is sometimes to be successful. And, yeah, I'm sure I wish that I'd been smarter along the way, but I still don't think that there's anything that takes the place of hard work.
No, and you demonstrated that through your career and in many ways. So, but I want to kind of shift gears a little bit. We've talked about a lot of the successes and a lot of the great kids and people but as and on no options on this podcast, we talk a lot about adversity and things and we talk about kids having adversity, but you guys, life is, I mean, it's not just with athletes and it's not just, I mean, adversity comes with all of us, right? And coach, sometimes we don't realize, but coaches deal with adversity a lot. And so I know through all of these years of all the success you had, and we just talked about this, behind a lot of success is a lot of challenges. And so, Coach, if you don't mind, I mean, what are some of your biggest challenges and adversity that you've dealt with? Because I know you've had them just like everybody else does.
Well, I think sometimes in talking to people, about coaching, again, it's funny. We always think the grass is greener somewhere else, and that it's easier. And I don't necessarily, think that is the case.
Mm-hmm.
I think about things that help you be successful. And the part of it is the hard work, but part of it's probably just luck to a certain extent too. I do think sometimes you do have to be in the right place at the right time. I'm not going to discount that. I do think that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jack Frost, and I think my lucky stars that
Yeah.
had an opportunity to come here to Georgetown and to be here and to live in this community. I think the same thing about finding Bill and being married to Bill. I think that what a stroke of,
Mm-hmm.
luck that was for me. But going back to, we all have our struggles and our crosses, to bear. We talk to kids all the time, about that. But I think what's really great is that it takes all kinds, and that, there's not just one way that, that all of that plays out. I think there are a lot of different ways. I look back and I think about just getting to the top and like getting to a place to where people would know our program and would respect it. And I think about that was hard in the beginning, but it's been way harder to do that year in and year out. And I think that consistency part that we sometimes, overlook, it's not just hard work. It's hard work every day. It's doing the right thing, even when it's really hard to do, over and over again, all the time. I think those are the things that sometimes we discount when we think about success or we think about, getting wherever we are. I will tell you that right now in my life, one of the most difficult things that I have ever done is be a caretaker. And, there's 15 years difference in my age and Bill's. Bill's 84 years old. I'm 70. 70 seems really, really old to some people. It doesn't seem very old to me right now, but being a caretaker for Bill, I had no idea, what that was like. And I think health is one of those things that we all just take for granted. And I know I have. And, I think right now, just Bill and I have always been, we've had our careers. We've been able to do a lot for other people. I don't even know how to describe the difference in what it's like right now to, for Bill to be first and foremost, in my mind, and to know that, that every meal that he eats, what time he goes to bed tonight. All of those things are dependent upon me. And for somebody that's never even had any children of my own, it's been an eye opener. I couldn't do it without great people around me again. Dr. Berg, Dr. Berg is a legend in Georgetown. He's a doctor that's a doctor to many of us, and he's my doctor and Bill's. And I couldn't make it without, somebody like him helping me to just make decisions. I think that's the hardest thing. And it's so crazy because, I've had a career where I have to make decisions every day. But making decisions when you're a caregiver is a way different type of decision. It's a different type of stress than I've ever dealt with before. So, yeah. So, I don't guess we ever get too old, Ty, to have new challenges and new things that we have to deal with in our lives.
Well, and thanks for sharing, because I just think, I think people, we all need to realize that we're all dealing with things, right? In different levels and different things. And I think sharing stories, I talk about it all the time. I grew up where my dad was one of those, boy, you be all right, put a Band-Aid on, nobody wants to hear your problems, right? And so I never talked about anything. And so I didn't for the longest until just in the last several years when my wife asked me to share my story at an extended family reunion, and I did. And on the way home, several people said, Ty, thanks for sharing. I'm going to sign up to be organ donors and all this. And I thought, wow, why am I being so selfish if I can help others by telling my story? And I say all that because I want people to realize, just like Coach Farney sharing her story and telling this, please share your story, because you never know the person to your right, to your left, the person at the grocery store, or whoever it may be, needs to hear that today.
Yes.
And I encourage people, because I can promise you there's no one, no matter how big, bad, massive this person may seem, they're dealing with adversity in some form. So never be ashamed of adversity, because I think it's something that we all deal with. And I know we all deal with it. So, but Coach, thank you for sharing that, because I just want people to know, you are, you're a person that a lot of people look up to in this community, in this industry, in this state. Coach, we've been talking a lot about adversity today, and it's super important, because I believe you teaching it to kids and kind of preparing them through this adversity so that they see it through life is extremely important. I think the people that, like myself, that are in business, it's great to hear about adversity, because we all deal with it. We deal, anybody does. But what are if you could talk to Elite in our audience, what are some words of advice that you would leave for the group, whether it be students, people, just in general? What are some of the advice you would give our audience?
I think when times are rough, I really do believe that that's what defines us. And I always say that when everything goes smoothly and, we're hitting all of our shots, or, everything's going great in business, then it's really easy, to, it's just easy, and it feels easy. But when things are adverse and they're really, really hard, that's when I think it really brings out the true essence of who we are. So, one of the things, I work for a great man. Again, I have been so fortunate in 51 years to work for a lot of high school principals, but I'll just tell you right now that Brian Johnson he is a prince of a man, and I love working for him. And I read something that he had put on social media, and it just put in words what I think I live every day. And he just said, that it's really hard to be in a bad mood. It's really hard to be pessimistic about things when we have a grateful heart. If we have a grateful heart, then it makes everything look different. It makes everything look better. And to me, I know it goes back to being a little girl, and I can just hear my mom, just remind me that I needed to count my blessings. And I think that is so important. Daily. And I mean, I will stop and I will just have to think, hey, as bad as I think this might be right now, I have to think about the good things. I have to think about the positive things. And, when I do that, it's really hard for me to be discouraged or to be in a bad mood or to be pessimistic about things. I mean, so to me, that's probably sounds really simple, but it's a lot harder to do you know, than it is to talk about it. But I think that's a huge key.
Well, yeah, I think those are great words. And I will say this too, and I think this is something that's important. And I want to say thank you for this because our education has changed so much in these 51 years. I would love to just talk to you about that sometime, just about that. But I do know this through all of that, and I'm very appreciative of this, that you're still very much strong in your faith, um, and it shows with these kids. And I don't think there's a more important time for people like you to be in our education with kids and showing that. So I personally want to say thank you for that. I think
That's
it's
one of the
important.
nicest things anybody's ever said. I appreciate that very much.
You're very
Very
welcome.
much.
And I think it's important. I think it sometimes goes overlooked of the people in the educational space because they've made it so hard for us to really sometimes teach, in my opinion, ethics and the right things. But I do appreciate, sometimes by showing by an example is the best way to even teach anything, right? So
It is.
I think that's just great to have people like you in the educational space.
Thank
Um,
you. And I have to put a plug in too. And I
yeah,
mean, it's, I could talk to you too about just changes, but I want to say this, people are always asking me or saying, oh, kids have changed, they haven't, and they haven't changed for the better. And I so disagree with that.
I agree.
I mean, I think yes, kids have changed. We've all changed, but I think it's all for the better, and I think that anything that makes things a little bit more difficult now than maybe the way it used to be, it's because we live in a really fast paced world and we have to really make time for things. But, I still think those opportunities to do good and those opportunities for kids to be great kids, they're still there. And I see kids taking advantage of that every day.
I agree. I love that. I love that because I think that's a true statement. I mean, and you do hear it a lot. Oh, the kids nowadays, and being that I get to be around a lot of them as well, I agree with you. I think there's some amazing things that these kids are doing, and they
They
just
are.
they have a lot different tools
Yes.
than we had growing up. But I heard a statement the other day that I thought was pretty good, Coach. It was we talk about the internet and we talk about all these things that have come along over the years, and now with all the social media and some of it's amazing things. And I was at a conference and we were talking about those things like all the great things and the things now that we have and now with AI, this topic about AI and all it's doing, right? And a gentleman got up and he said, guys, back in the day, someone they could take a pencil and write a beautiful novel, or they could shove it in their eye.
Yes.
Same
It's what we
thing.
do with those
It's
tools.
what we do with the tools, or what is so important. And I thought that was a pretty good statement because you think about we talk about how bad AI is. Well, AI is pretty. I mean, I was using it today. It's absolutely
My
pretty neat
dentist
on
was
some of the
using it and
stuff.
showing it to me a couple of weeks ago. Amazing.
It's an amazing tool. Now, could we do some bad
Yes.
things? Absolutely. So, and I say all that because our kids and a lot of these people that are coming up with this thing are these young kids.
Mhm.
It's the guy at the conference that was talking about AI was a probably 27-year-old kid
Yeah.
telling us all about this stuff, right? So I'm amazed with what the young kids are doing, and I think again it's kind of like what we said. I mean, we could shove a pencil in our eye, or we can write a beautiful
Mhm.
novel. It's pretty simple, right? We can do some damage with some stuff, or we can do some really amazing things. And I think these kids nowadays are doing some amazing things.
They
I
are
really do.
doing some incredible things. Yes, they are.
Well, I have one question. What, how really difficult, and this is kind of out of the kind of question thing here, but how hard is it to win a state championship? Because I mean, people I know that is a big deal, but my goodness, when you really look at the different districts and the levels in Texas, 5A women's basketball, how hard is it to win a state championship?
It's hard, Ty. It's incredibly hard. Um, and the basketball piece of it is the least of it, to be honest. You think about how I say this, we have incredible trainers here at Georgetown High School that keep our kids healthy. I mean, your kids have to be healthy. You have to have parents that buy into what you're doing. I mean, there are so many things that have to happen over the course of a season that, I don't think, that we always think about. I will tell you this, and this kind of puts it into perspective too. One time I was very blessed. I was on like a national coaches board of directors, and I got to be really good friends with the cross country coach in Utah. And I said something to Bill about, hey, so and so has won 17 state championships, in cross country in Utah. And I'm like, that is just incredible. And Bill is like, it is, but he goes, you do realize that in the large classification in Utah, Rhonda, there's probably 10 schools. And I was like, what? He's like, it's relative. There are probably 10 schools. So he's like, I'm not discounting that. I mean, he is, at the pinnacle of coaching cross country in Utah. But he goes, that would probably be the equivalent to winning 10 10 district championships in Texas, because we have so many more schools. So, I mean, that in and of itself, we have so many more schools in Texas. I'm not going to say that we necessarily are better coaches in Texas, but we do have a lot of competition, and that in and of itself is something that I don't think people really, stop to think about. But it's very difficult. And I think anybody that would tell you that it's easy, I can't even imagine that, because it's very difficult. You have to be very blessed and very lucky. And a lot of things have to line up just right for that to happen. You have to have a lot of good people around you.
Yes. Well, and like you said, hard work and a lot of timing. There's a lot of things that have to fall in place. But I wanted to ask you that because I obviously I know you got to enjoy that, but I know that's the pinnacle that all you great coaches are fighting for every year. And it's just, when I watch the level of competition and some of this, it's amazing to me.
Well, and you have to prepare every year, Ty. It doesn't make any difference. I believe every year that next year, this coming year is going to be better. It's going to be great. It's going to be better than any year we've ever had. And I guarantee you, the first time that I don't think that will be the time that I decide to not do this anymore. But you have to prepare. A lot of things have to align just right, I think, to win a state championship. But the first thing is you have to prepare. You have to prepare for that every year, regardless.
Yeah. No, I wrote that question down because I really wanted to hear your answer, because gosh, dog it. I never got to experience a state championship as a athlete. But man, just being around this and seeing you guys work your tails off and just fighting for that. And gosh,
I have to say this. I think probably the most exciting thing about winning a state championship is after every other game, if you don't win the last game, then there's always, some type of regret. There's always, some type of, you wish you'd have done this or, whatever. But when you win and you win that last game, that's like an experience and a joy that you see in your kids that, you don't see any other time, because every other time, the last game of the year, you're not successful. We're back to that adversity again. Everybody else except the one that wins it all, is going to experience that at the end of their season, even if you're like Vicki Benson and you were undefeated and you've had a great season, it comes down to that last game. And I certainly don't think that defines, success, or it defines the season. But I will say, when you do win that, there's a joy that is different from any other.
That is great. Yeah, I appreciate all the insight of this, and I know there's been so many lessons that come out of this, and I'm excited that and in life lessons. We talk as a coach, we talk as all the, but there's just so many life lessons that I think you've brought out, and again, I think Coach, you and I could probably talk for 3 or 4 more sessions of this, but and we will. I want to get you back on here and talk some more, but I can't thank you enough. Is there anything you'd like to leave our group with? Is there just any last words that you would like to?
Well, Ty, I just want to say thank you. And, I know people realize how important you and Crystal are to this community. But you are, you're a dear friend. You're somebody that I respect on a zillion different levels. And I am so thrilled that you're doing this and that you're sharing your story, because I do think that it's very impactful. And I think you're like a lot of successful people that I know. People don't really know you. They don't really know all of the great things, and they don't know the adversity that you have dealt with, and I just admire Crystal. I admire you. And I love Reese. And this has been so much fun. I've enjoyed visiting with you.
Well, I appreciate that. That means a lot to me, and I do appreciate that. But again, thank you for your time and all the great wisdom, Coach. And I will say this.
I'm just old, Ty. I'm old.
No, not at all. Not at all. I love that. I mean, but gosh, just the impact, Coach. And again, I got all these notes written down here and things that I can't thank you enough for the impact you've had on kids and people and this community. So, Coach, thanks for having me on. We loved having you on the show today, and I promise you we're going to get you back.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to No Options. If this episode spoke to you, please take a moment and leave a review. And more importantly, please share it with someone who may need to hear it. You can find more stories, resources, and ways to connect over at my website, tygibson.com. And that is Gibson with a P, TYGIPSON.com. Remember, no matter where you are, your story isn't over yet if you live like you have no options. I'll see you next time.
Ty Gibson is an entrepreneur, a relentless survivor. Did you know he's also a powerhouse speaker? After overcoming 3 transplants, juvenile diabetes, he built thriving businesses with one mantra: no options. Ty transforms adversity into action. His keynotes ignite audiences with real-world resilience and 30-plus years of sales mastery. Are you ready to inspire your team? Book Ty Gibson today as your next speaker. You can call 512-944-4780 or head over to tygibson.com. That's Gibson with a P. It's time for your event to share the motivation that is no options.